at least on one occasion, it's translated as Lord of Hosts. And the commentators that I looked at said that it could mean the God of the armies of the earth, or 2, God of the armies of the stars, or 3, God of the unseen armies of angels, or 4, all of them. That's the one I'd lean toward. Yeah, he is the God. God of the armies on this earth, God of the armies out there, God of the armies in the heavens. Yeah, he heard them. And that's kind of a scary thing. You know, Jesus said at one point that he could call, 12 legions of angels. Don't think I need your help. All it takes is a word. 12 legions of angels would show up. And we guesstimated the low end, that was probably about 72,000 angels. I think I'd take care of just about any old fight. Well, the Lord's probably got more than that. And this is who they're talking to. This is who's hearing them. Exactly right. They're complaining to the Lord, the God, the owner of everything. So what's the third offense? They're guilty of hoarding. They're guilty of stealing. What else are they guilty of? Well, yes, they are. That one's actually, I think, 4 on my list, but that's okay too. Well, the poor people are actually the ones doing the complaining in this case, I think. But that could be said of anybody, rich or poor. Complaining is an issue. But in verse 6, as was just mentioned, you have condemned and put to death the righteous man, and he does not resist you. And as we talked about before, he probably couldn't. He doesn't have the means to resist. He doesn't have the power to resist. He doesn't have the help to resist. And when you're stealing somebody's livelihood, you're also stealing his ability to eat. And in essence, you are killing him and you are killing his family. The fourth one, though, that I had was in verse 5. You live luxuriously on the earth, leading a life of wanton pleasure. You've fattened your hearts for the day of slaughter. So wasteful living. So they've hoarded, they've stolen, they've lived a life of wanton pleasure, and they've even committed murder. Yes? 9:29. Romans 9:29. It's just as Isaiah foretold, unless the Lord Sabaoth had led us to a posterity, we would have become like Sodom and would have resembled Gomorrah. Same way, and I had written out to the side on that one, Lord of Hosts. And I think if you go back to Isaiah, which is Isaiah 1:9, it actually translates it that way in most of them. Yeah, at least in the New American Standard, Isaiah 1:9 says, unless the Lord of hosts. And see, that's a quote in Romans, actually quoting this one, but the way it's translated here says Lord of hosts. Has left a few survivors. We would be like Sodom and we would be like Gomorrah. But in the Romans letter, it actually uses Lord of Sabaoth. So Lord of hosts, I think, is probably a good translation of it, but likely means Lord of the armies. And whether it's earthly armies or heavenly armies or other armies or all of them combined, I think that's what you need to refer to. So they're also guilty of murder, as was pointed out, because whether active or passive, God considers this to be murder. If you remember in Matthew chapter 5, when Jesus is talking about an individual kills his brother, he is guilty of murder. He says, but I tell you that if you are, what? angry. Oh. Ever get angry with your brother? There were times I wanted to rip my brother's heads off. One at a time or both together. I didn't care. Jesus said, well, guess what, David? Puts you in good standing, doesn't it? Yeah. Glad I grew out of that. But if I'm stealing somebody's livelihood, I'm definitely guilty of murder. One of the marks of oppression, dissatisfaction, is merely abusing others or taking from them what is theirs. And right now we have, I think, a society that we are using and abusing one another. Hence, we have all the, thankfully at least now, rebellion of all this, and people are becoming less tolerant of it, because a lot of times, as you're finding out with all of these people that are accused of things, it was known. Harvey Weinstein, everybody knew it. Well, not everybody, you and I didn't, but everybody in Hollywood knew it. Everybody knew it. Why didn't somebody do something? You know, the physical therapist for the gymnast, everybody knew it. Well, you and I didn't. But everybody that was in the gymnastics world knew it. Why did they put up with it? You know, the Penn State defensive coach, everybody knew it. Well, you and I didn't, but everybody at Penn State did. Well, at least everybody around the Penn State football team did. That's one thing. And then, you know, well, they're rich, they're powerful, we don't want to upset the apple cart. We're winning. You know, we're winning the gymnastics, we're winning the football, we're winning this, we're winning that. You know, the great movies, you know, they're raking in all the awards. They don't want to lose the crumbs that are Yeah. It's all a form of greed. It's all going right back to what James is talking about here, the way we use and abuse people. You know, we're stealing from them, we're using them, we're abusing them, we're not allowing them to have what little bit they ought to have. And James says, you know what? The Lord is listening. The Lord is taking all this in, and the Lord will settle the accounts. Jesus said, you're laughing now. You're not going to be laughing then. You're fat, dumb, and happy now. You're not going to be fat, dumb, and happy then, because God will settle accounts. Some of them probably are. Some of them probably are. You know, this is probably chasing a rabbit, but it just blows my mind that country singers, and I'll just pick on them for right now, country singers can sing these great songs about love, great songs about God, great songs about church and heaven, and turn right around in the next breath and sing about drinking and getting drunk and divorce and leaving each other and mistreating each other and they don't blink an eye. They don't think a thing about it. That I can spew filth out of my mouth in 1 second, turn and talk God in the second, and everything's fine. And I know that's not the only ones we ought to be talking about, because it's everywhere. You know, we might have that misconception too. I can go to work and talk this way, then I go home and I talk this way, then I go to church and I talk this way. Well, which way am I? We talked about that a few weeks ago. We're this guy. We're fooling ourselves in this case. This is the guy I am. But we kind of fool ourselves. Benefits of saving. Demonstrates good stewardship of the resources provided by God. Makes a person able to respond to the needs of others. Assumes that God sometimes provides for people through other people. Responsible preparation for tomorrow. Promotes wise decision making. You know, in 1 Timothy 5:8, Paul tells Timothy, if somebody does not provide for his own, what is he? Worse than an infidel, right? In Ephesians chapter 4, verse 28, Paul says, you got a job, and one of the reasons you have a job is for what? To give others. Give to others. Yeah, that's why you have an income. Wait a second. I have money so that I can give to others? Well, that's what Paul said. Mm-hmm. Yes. There are certain ways that you can give to others. You can walk somebody in and feed them. You don't have to hand them $10 and say, go get a hamburger or something like that when you know that it's not likely. And there are organizations that make it their lot in life to take care of others. But even with that, you need to look and see, is it 70% that's going to the organization and then 30% to take care of the person? Yeah, or is it 30% that's taking care of the organization and 70% that's getting out there to taking care of people? But, you know, and I know sometimes when people come to a church building and they want money, somebody will say, well, that's fine, you know, if you rake the leaves around here, I'll pay you a couple bucks, you know, or $10 or whatever. You know, if you rake, and the guy, well, no, I don't, okay, fine, well, that's fine. But sometimes we can get so worried about what somebody's going to do with the money that we never give out any money, you know, and then there's that side of it. Sometimes we just have to give the money out and let God work that out, you know. You've done your responsibility, and now some of that is them. Now, that doesn't mean you have to, if you know good and well that you watch somebody go into the liquor store with your money, well, you're not going to give him money again, right? I mean, you have to be a good steward, but at the same time, you can fall to the other side, so worried about somebody doing something wrong that you never give them the opportunity to do something right. So there's that side of it too. The dangers in hoarding, it fosters a sense of earthly security and an independence from God. It promotes a sense of superiority over others. It assumes that what a person gains is only for that person's benefit and nobody else's. It shows irresponsible indulgence for today, and it promotes impulsive spending decisions. A lot of difference between the hoarding and the saving. And Luke is not saying that we do not need to save. He's saying we do not need to hoard. We display the following things. We are guilty of self-indulgence. When we assume that wealth should always first be used to meet our own needs. When we visualize wealth as a protection or insulation between us and the rest of the world. When we waste, destroy, or discard what others would have put to good use. When we display smugness or pride at the differences between what we have and what others have or don't have. When we invest in things purely for the status without considering usefulness. Good stuff. As citizens of the most prosperous nation on earth, how do you think James 1-6 applies to us? You know, when you look at all the wealth in the entire world, and you start, you know, kind of stacking things up and see where we fall in there, we, no matter how poor we are in this group right here, are going to fall into the top 10%. And that's kind of scary, because there's a lot of people out there that have little or nothing. And so whether we want to or not, we fall into this rich category. And we need to be careful how we're using it. He tells his brethren there, he says, be patient for the coming of the Lord. He uses the farmer as an example. He says that the farmer is patient because he's waiting for the early and the late rains. So that means the farmer just sits down and waits, right? No, the farmer's going to work. He's got lots of things that he needs to do before the early rain, between the early rain and the late rain, and then even after the late rain. So patience doesn't mean sitting on your duff and just waiting on God to do his thing. You're doing what you need to do too, and then you're still leaving room for God to do what God is going to do. How does James say we need to demonstrate patience? Yeah, don't complain about one another. And strengthen your hearts, for the coming of the Lord is near. The judge is standing at the door. Until the coming of the Lord is near. The judge is standing right outside the door. Now, this has been about 2,000 years since that was written. So did James get it wrong? No. No, because this event is so sure. This event is so certain. It's going to happen. He could even talk about it in the past tense if he wanted to, because it is going to happen. So, that's true. And compared to eternity, what is 80, 90, 100 years? Nothing. That's a drop in the bucket. Drop in the bucket. Exactly right. So he used the farmer. Who else did he use as an example of patience? The prophets, right? Well, he gets to Job. He gets to Job. He sure does. But the prophets, he says, we use them as an example. They suffered and they endured. And he says we count those as blessed. And probably using Ken's definition of blessed, they are better off now. They are more fortunate now because of what they have done. And then you have heard of the endurance of Job. What makes Job a good example? Okay, that's a great thing there. And you know, Job cursed the day he was born, but he never cursed God. And in chapter 1, where it kind of summarizes everything, it says in all of this, Job did not sin. And he had a bunch of people trying to influence him. And God had something to say to each of them too. And it wasn't nice. But another thing that makes Job an excellent example for what James is talking about right here, Job was rich. Job was filthy rich. Job had it made. Job was riding the easy way, you know. He had many kids. He had great lands. He had great flocks, great herds. He was God's man. You know, as a matter of fact, when Satan goes to God, what does he say? Well, you've hemmed him up. You protected him. I can't touch him. When you're rich and you think you're rich because God's blessing, Job is the perfect example. Because Job did absolutely nothing wrong. Job did not sin. Job did not go wrong. And he lost everything. In a day, he lost his entire family. He lost his herds. He lost his flocks. He lost everything but his wife. It was done in a day. And he was covered in boils. He was a miserable man. And everybody said, curse God and die. You've obviously done something wrong, Job. Repent. Yes, he was. And that's James' point. Look at the end. You know, he's doubly blessed with kids and herds and flocks and land and all that, and lives on another 140 years after that. But he's the perfect example of a rich man losing it all in a day, and they would know it. These are people that are reading James' letter, and they came out of Judaism. They know the story of Job. They know he was a rich man. They also know he did absolutely nothing wrong, and yet he lost it all. That's true. Very true. Very true. Thank you very much for your comments. We will wrap this one up next week and then jump into the last part of chapter 5.
867.